Hello, everyone. Welcome back. What if I told you that part of Chicago's migrant story didn't begin in Chicago? It didn't even begin with Mayor Brandon Johnson. It leads us all the way back to decisions made in Washington, D.C., years before the first migrant bus arrived. And one of those presidents making those decisions was Donald Trump. Trump was president in 2017. Just 7 months later, in August 2017, his administration imposed major financial sanctions on Venezuela. Check this clip out.
At some point, I would imagine things will change, but we really haven't done the really tough sanctions yet. We can do the tough sanctions, and all options are open, so we may be doing that. But we haven't done the toughest of sanctions, as you know. We've done.
Think of it this way. The United States made it much harder for the Venezuelan government to use Americans' financial system to borrow new money and refinance its debt. Venezuela was already in serious economic trouble. Now another major source of financing was being squeezed. But that was only the beginning. In January 2019, Trump dramatically increased the pressure. Look at what Trump said at the United Nations. Watch this clip.
Of democracy in Venezuela. Today we are announcing additional sanctions against the repressive regime, targeting Maduro's inner circle and close advisors. We are
This time, his administration went directly after PDVSA, Venezuela's state-owned oil company. Here is John Bolton, former National Security Advisor to Trump.
For this purpose, we're going to announce sanctions against Petroleas de Venezuela, Sociedad Anima, or PDVSA, as it's known by its Spanish acronym, the state-owned oil monopoly. We have continued to expose the corruption of Maduro and his cronies, and today's action ensures they can no longer loot the assets of the Venezuelan people.
And you need to understand why that mattered. PDVSA wasn't some ordinary private corporation. Oil was the financial lifeblood of the Venezuelan government. Here, the Trump administration is stating that Maduro's government is corrupt. And here's where the story gets really interesting. Venezuela possesses the largest proven oil reserves in the world.
We're going to run the country.
So now we have to ask, was this only about democracy, or was something else at stake? See what Trump had to say about Venezuela.
We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago.
The Trump administration said its goal was to pressure Nicolas Maduro to restore democracy and hold free and fair elections. But critics of the sanctions tell a very different story. Now, this is where things get messy. Depending on who you ask, Trump either added fuel to a house that was already burning or significantly intensified an economic disaster. Venezuela already had enormous problems: economic mismanagement, corruption, political repression, failing oil production, and a devastating economic collapse. But many researchers argue that U.S. financial and oil sanctions made an already terrible situation even worse by further restricting Venezuela's access to financing and oil revenues. An economic collapse doesn't stay inside a country's borders. As conditions deteriorated, millions of Venezuelans left their homeland searching for safety, stability, jobs, food, medicine, and opportunity elsewhere. And eventually, some of those people made their way north toward the United States. That's where our Chicago story comes back in. By 2022, buses carrying migrants began arriving in Chicago, and many of those new arrivals were from Venezuela. So when someone asks, why did all these migrants suddenly show up in Chicago? Don't start the story with Mayor Brandon Johnson. The story started years earlier. And the next question is even more important. Who put these migrants on buses and sent them to Chicago? If you have not subscribed and find this information interesting, please subscribe, hit that bell, and be on the lookout for part 2 of this series. Thank you for your time, and I wish you well. Peace out.